Today we're going to be looking at a lot of must-stash players for Dynasty Fantasy Football that you can stash at the end of your bench. These are players that you're hoarding as lottery tickets for the offseason, for next year, whatever you want to do. You can be very ambiguous with this. You can be pretty broad with this. Any player you really want to hoard, depending on how deep your league is, you can really go after it. Get your guy here. They have to be cheap. They have to be on the back end of your bench, because if not, they're just actual players you're rostering. But we think outside the box, and I'm going to give you some ideas today. But before we dig in, you need to click that subscribe button right now, because we're talking about these players for your dynasty teams every day. We're helping you with trades. We're helping you with stashes. We're definitely looking at the rookie draft, the Senior Bowl, and everything else. And I got Senior Bowl clips coming at you left and right. Click that button, stop missing out. But we got to dig into this fast, because I got a lot of players this week, because I just wanted to drop it on you. And the first guy I'm talking about was mentioned in the comment section a few videos ago, Ben Sinnott. And yes, he's a good stash play, especially at the tight end spot. I also do not recommend stashing more than one or so tight ends. Like, do not get into the position where you got a lot of tight ends stashed and it's overtaking your roster, because running back and wide receiver, those are more important positions. In the tight end spot, even a week where you're a tight end one, that could still be just 8 fantasy points. We had a few weeks during the season where like the tight end 8 only scored like 8 fantasy points. It was less than 10. And it was during the start of the season, but we have that every year. That being said, Ben Sinnott is in a great situation here with the Commanders. And I think a lot of people are looking to stack Commanders when they see Jaden Daniels and company. And he's cheap right now, tight end 20, a tight end 2 on the roster ability here when you're looking at value. When it comes to ADP, keep trade cut, market sentiment, whatever it is, it's fair. It makes sense, because it really was not on the field for his rookie season. Who knows how long it's going to take to develop. But he's still relatively cheap, not super liquid on the market, but a guy to stash on the back end of your bench. Luke Schoonmaker's another tight end to look at. A little bit cheaper, but he's on a team that will spam the tight end spot with targets. Dak Prescott spams tight ends. Good athletic profile. Good draft capital too. Is a day 2 guy. Second round pick to the Dallas Cowboys. And is a tight end prospect that could be seeing more opportunities somewhere down the line. Maybe not next year, maybe the year after, but somewhere down the line. And he has 3 tight end 1 weeks. More importantly, 3 double-digit fantasy scoring weeks, which is hard to do for a backup tight end. So if he gets his opportunity anywhere down the line, I look for him to give you good results, because this is a team that just spams the position. Tight end 35, super cheap. A good stash option if you're looking for that at the tight end spot. Will Shipley made some noise recently, and I just wanted to look at the market and see where he's at. He's still in stash status, and going into year 2, might be getting a little bit more run. We know it's the Saquon Barkley show, but he's also got an injury history, and that could ramp back up. You never know. Football is football. He's 22 years old at Clemson. He was a jack-of-all-trades running back. Can be used in the passing game. Can be used up the gut a little bit. Good vision. Runs crispy routes. He did in high school. We covered the tape on that back in the day. Will Shipley could be a sneaky prospect down the line. He's super cheap. You're not looking at him as a starter, obviously, like you shouldn't on hardly anybody on this list. But Will Shipley could be a lottery ticket that you're looking at for 2025. Izzy Abanikanda, going to be a free agent, going to be looking for a new home, but he's a very talented running back prospect. And honestly, when it comes to stash plays, it's how deep you want to take it. How deep is your league? But I honestly am going to look deep, and I'm also going to look a little bit shallow with this to help everybody, and I'm covering a lot of players. So a guy like Izzy Abanikanda at Pitt, that final season, productive. At the Jets, in training camp, he's had his moments too. When he went to the 49ers, we were watching him like a hawk. It was late in the season, wasn't able to get any opportunities, but a running back to pay attention to. I can say this, social media really perked its ears up when Izzy Abanikanda signed with the 49ers, and they were going through all those injuries at the running back position, and you're wondering how quick could he ramp up to this new offense. It wasn't quick enough, but Izzy Abanikanda is a running back to pay attention to through free agency, not a call. This is just a lottery ticket for the short term. This is a jacked running back class. This is going to nuke a lot of these players. Noah Brown is going to be a free agent, and he's got a lot of upside here, and he's a guy that can go team to team and give you some value. A lot of people are predicting this to be a weak wide receiver class. I think it has less talent, but I think it can be a very sneaky wide receiver class as well. But a guy like Noah Brown, 8 targets, 7, 6, 7, and 10 in week 12. And this was in a moment where he got traded to the Commanders and had to ramp up in this program here. And now we're looking at Noah Brown come back from an injury, maybe going into next year. But look at where he's valued at. 116th among wide receivers. The market took a dive. They don't know where he's going to be at next year. He's not a young wide receiver, but it's a cheap chip. A very cheap chip. A free chip. Maybe a guy you just watch off the waiver wire. I consider the waiver wire part of my roster as well, especially if I can flip guys off and on, and it's very cheap to do so depending on your league settings. That being said, Noah Brown, 116 among wide receivers. The market's saying, hey, we're not expecting much, but a guy that can go to a new situation and has proven that he can rack up some targets. Pay attention to his health over the offseason, where he's going to be at. But Nick Chubb is another guy we're paying attention to. Where his health's going to be at, where he's going to be playing at. Running back 54 in the rankings here. And he could be coming back from this injury being all right, or it could be a little bit of this. However, RB54, you got your stable of backs. He goes in a situation where he starts seeing a little bit of workload, and maybe you get a little bit of something out of Nick Chubb. Maybe you do, maybe you don't. But his price tag right here, you catch him on the cheap, you catch him at the right value, or you got him stashed, or you got him rostered and you're wondering what to do. Maybe you want to hold on a little bit and see what happens. But as RB54, he's cheap, and he's a guy that can be hoarded on the back end of your roster. Just see if he can get you some good weeks. Just see if that happens. Now, if you're not in that position where you're trying to get assets, that's a totally different story. Then you may want younger stashes than a Nick Chubb, than a Noah Brown. Really depending on how you're building your team. Young stash, old stash, upside stash, steady stash. What are you getting here? But you're looking at a guy, back 9 of his career for sure, injury history for sure, but could be in a situation here that he gives you a few good weeks. He got you 2 last year, almost 3 with that 10.2 week against Cincinnati, and maybe you could use that in a pinch if your running back depth chart goes to hell. Jalen Wright, young stash play, lottery ticket play, and he has okay draft capital, 4th rounder, but has that 4.3 speed. Fits well with the Dolphins. We're going into year 2. There's a little bit of more raw prospect coming out of college. We can all say that. And that being said, when we look at Jalen Wright, he has the potential to go off. Any year, we see the running backs in front of him. They're banged up with injuries all the time. Achen's getting hurt left and right. All the other running backs on the offense, like Raheem Mostert, getting hurt left and right. He'll eventually get his opportunity. The Dolphins were unstable with Tua out left and right due to injuries. So this Dolphins team was banged up. Jalen Wright was developing. So you got to give him some grace. But RB38, the market's starting to come back up to him. So he's not very liquid on the market. But if I have him already on my team and I like him stashed, then guess what? I agree with you. I think he's a great lottery ticket play. I'm not here to sell you. I'm here to talk about the stashes, honestly. I think he's a great lottery ticket play if you have him. JT Sanders. The market's kind of high on him. Tight end 18. But look at what he did this year. 5 targets, 7 targets, 6 targets, 5 targets, 5 targets. And we have 2 tight end 1 weeks. 3 tight end 2 weeks, which doesn't really matter in fantasy football because there's no really difference between a tight end 14 and tight end like top 25 when it comes to weekly scoring. But he showed some flashes. A guy to pay attention to in the offseason. A guy to hoard and hold on to if you must. Still a little bit pricey for a stash play at tight end, especially if you paid up for a tight end. And you got to see where he's going at in your drafts. But if you have him stashed away, and that's your main stash, he did flash a little bit this year. We all know that, especially if you had him rostered. But if you look at him from week to week, if you looked at him from a redraft lens, he was a guy that we were looking at off the waiver wire as a random get every week because of the workload and opportunities that was coming his way when he was healthy. When he was healthy, he was getting opportunities, and he was flashing a little bit, and you saw that in the middle of the season. Sean Tucker for always and ever, especially when he's on the Bucs. And if you have one of those Bucs running backs, you're probably interested in Sean Tucker. Because if one of those guys go down, he's going to be getting the work, and he's a good stash, he's a good handcuff. He's demonstrated that he can compete at the NFL level. He did that week 6 against the Saints. Can definitely give you and churn out that production. That being said, we're looking at a running back prospect. Very productive at Syracuse. Had that heart condition. Fell to the draft. Rookie season. Couldn't really practice with the team until we got late into like training camp. It was like middle of July, early July or something like that till we could really get after it in practice. So we were behind the 8 ball a little bit. So that makes sense. And the Bucs didn't really know what they had, and Bucky Irvin fell to him. Bucky Irvin's a great back, and Bucky Irvin's a really good back. So they had to make the selection. Sean Tucker is a good running back. Maybe not a generational talent or anything like that, but every team in the National Football League would love to have him as their RB3, as a step in. And when one of these running backs go down, he's going to get a little bit extra work, and you may want that on your team, especially if you got like a Rachaad White or you got a Bucky Irving. Austin Eckler's in stash territory. The market dropped heavily on him when he got hurt with a concussion. They went down on him pretty bad. Looks like we're going to have a little bit more time with the Commanders. Almost 30 years old. We're not stashing. We're not hoarding. We're not trying to collect. We're not trying to collect. That's the right word for it. 30-year-old running backs. Nobody does. But as a stash play, back end of your bench, as a pinch play, at the price tag you see here, and I'm going off price. That's really the true indicator for me. You may say, hey, he's just a roster player. I see how productive he was. But the market's saying different too, because they crashed him on the market. And that's what happens to older running backs. So you might be able to catch him as an older stash play if you're a win now team. Because we got to look at this from different angles. That's why I'm talking about a million players today. He could be a different angle for you. Considering the market sentiment crashed, I don't see him being too liquid due to the production he gave. But the market did crash overall. Like if you put 100 Dynasty gamers in a room, you bring up Austin Eckler, it ain't going to be too positive. So you might be able to catch something for him. Or if you got him on your roster, just look at what he did when he was healthy, sharing the backfield, getting some opportunities. And again, running backs are in and out as the RB1. Even with him being a 1B back or an RB2 back with some workload, he's still able to give you a little something in the pinch. Jalen Polk, the market crashed on him heavy. Did you like him as a prospect? Did you like what you saw at Washington? If so, he could be a stash play going into 2025. The Patriots are in a spot here where they could be drafting T-Mac with the first-round pick. They could definitely be doing that. They could be adding more pass catchers still. They're in a position to do that. There's some other players at the top of the draft they could go after as well. Jalen Polk's in jeopardy to just be like a stock that just crashes huge. He crashed big time. Usually when you see a chart like this after the rookie season, when the player just dead crashes like this to almost 100 range, that you're free falling, that's a bad indicator. That's a bad indicator of the player. Not many players do that. Quentin Johnston did not crash like that, and we saw a little bounce back of Quentin Johnston. Jalen Polk may be able to rejuvenate things. He did look okay in training camp. He did have some moments in training camp. He's a very twitchy wide receiver who can get in and out of his breaks. Maybe we develop going into year 2. But if you like the prospect, he's super cheap right now. Same with Javon Baker. Javon Baker's a good wide receiver. He's got a lot of talent. We just got to put it together. But we don't have a long time to do so. But he also doesn't have the greatest draft capital behind him. Javon Baker's got a lot of talent. And if you're looking deep at wide receiver for a stash, a guy to hold through training camp, through the early part of the season, that's what I would look for at Javon Baker as a stash if you're looking at him. He does have talent. He does have an opportunity where he could blow up and the Patriots offense if he puts things together and lives up to the hype. Javon Baker could be a guy you want to hoard, but I like Kayshon Boutte. In this offense, I like Kayshon Boutte. Like, even if they draft T-Mac, this is a wide receiver that ran on 90% of the routes last year, that got 6 targets or more in a lot of games. 5 targets or more in a lot of games. This is a guy that wasn't very productive, but was on the field. They like him to an extent, and we're just ramping back up. It's been a long ramp-up process from that injury at LSU, and we're coming back a little bit. And maybe we don't come back fully. Maybe it doesn't happen. But if you're looking at somebody, wide receiver, 70 range, 100 range, Kayshon Boutte, from what we saw last year, when they bring in another wide receiver, might be getting more opportunities, might not. Might not. This could be it. This could be his swan song. This could be it for him. But if you're taking a chance on a guy through training camp, I would like a guy who got some opportunity in season, that was on the field, that they kept out there more than any other wide receiver. He ran more routes than Pop Douglas every game. He ran more routes than Kendrick Bourne when they were all out there every game. He led the team in routes ran most of the time. I would put chips on him. I would understand that. Dylan Lobbit, the thing about him, even though it was in the small school ranks, his final year, he caught more balls than Marvin Harrison Jr. in college. We were injured all this season. Didn't really get the chance to prove ourselves. We had some other running backs on the team step up. So honestly, not a running back we should be too keen on. The market's saying that, around RB 80 range. But he's cheap. He's electric. Can catch the ball in the backfield. I look for the Raiders to draft the running back, and maybe even 2 in this draft, which could nuke his value. But there's no value right here, and we're valuing him as a stash play. There's upside to his game as a pinch play if injuries happen, if he starts stepping it up in training camp. So this is a stash you're looking at through training camp, through the draft process, to see where he's going to be at on the depth chart. So Kendre Miller, a lot of people are down on him from what they saw in the back end of the season. Remember, that's a Spencer Rattler-led team with a ton of injuries. And when it comes to Kendre Miller, honestly, I can say we don't know much about him. We do not. He's been often injured. When he gets his opportunity, it hasn't been the best situation. We're really just trying to get by. He's in the doghouse with his team a lot due to the injuries. Bad as RB46. The market's coming back up in the offseason. I think they're realizing that fact that he was playing in a bad situation, and he could ultimately be a bad running back. He could definitely be a bad running back, or he could be an okay running back with some promise. That could definitely be it. Kendre Miller, though, on the back end of your roster, if something happens to Kamara, something happens to this depth chart, I imagine they're probably going to bring in another running back. This team experienced a lot of injuries, though, so they're probably got FOMO off of that, so they're looking to patch things up. Kendre Miller experienced a lot of injuries, so they don't trust him, and there's a lot of good running backs. When I say bring in another running back to a team, 7th round will do it. 7th round will do it. This is how deep this running back class is. Kendre Miller's just the stock that you're seeing what happens throughout training camp, where he's going to be at in the start of the season. Luke McCaffrey. And I'm not too keen of his prospect profile. I'm not too keen of him as a prospect. But I do recognize that there's opportunity here on the Commanders. And I'll fight against that. I'll fight against my own brain here. Luke McCaffrey is in a position where if he develops, starts getting more opportunity, this is a good offense. There was some injuries at the wide receiver spot this year. He could have did more this year. He could have shelled out a little bit more, but we're also a rookie. We're also a small schooler. We're also not the greatest prospect of all time. Kind of got oversold during the Senior Bowl. But Luke McCaffrey's a player here that could step it up in the future. We're in an offense that pushes the pace, that throws the ball well, gets it downfield. This could be a wide receiver that you stash that could get you a little bit more than you're thinking about when it comes to fantasy production. Could get you a good return on investment. Elijah Moore hitting free agency, and he could land in a good situation. He could land back with the Browns. He could land anywhere. But if we land with a good quarterback, if we land in a situation where we're a good wide receiver 3-2 in the offense, we're getting moved around, targets can be spread around a little bit, we could be something. And it could be like wide receiver 40 range in value. It could be something like that where you get a few spike weeks. It could be something that what we saw in the Browns last year, where there were just some games where you got way more targets than expected, and you're running a good bit of routes, you can't count on it, but it's here and there, but you can use them in a pinch. Maybe we get that out of Elijah Moore. And at wide receiver 75 price range, we know we're getting a talented wide receiver. We know we're getting good athleticism. And I believe he's going to have a good market this offseason. Isaiah Davis. So if Breece Hall goes down, they're going to use 2 running backs. That is what the Jets said. It's not going to be the Braylon Allen show. Braylon Allen's not going to get all the workload. That is not happening. Isaiah Davis will get a good opportunity share. He'll get some work, maybe some goal line looks as well as he's filling in, spelling. So Isaiah Davis is a guy to roster, a guy to stash, just in case that event happens. I do not look for the Jets to be bringing in many more running backs. They might. They seem to like that position a lot because they keep drafting running backs. They drafted 2 last year. They drafted Izzy the year before. They have Breece Hall. They like running backs. They might. But Isaiah Davis is a decent talent. They got him at a good cost. RB58 back into your roster. That's something to stash. Jalen Coker. We're looking at a wide receiver here we've been talking about just about every week almost. And he graded well per PFF. The market's actually raising on him. And he could go unscathed. This isn't a deep wide receiver class. And if they go out of the first round, which more than likely they will, without drafting a wide receiver, he has the chance to beat out a lot of these wide receivers in this rookie class once we get out of the first round. There's some good ones in round 2 and round 3. There's some ones that I do like, but he has a chance to do so. We're good at creating separation. We're good at getting targets downfield. The program likes him. Bryce Young likes him. Adam Thielen loves him. This is a player, as a stash play, might give you something. Jordan Whittington. I think he's in jeopardy of getting nuked through this draft. I think from what we're seeing from the Senior Bowl that the Rams might go after one of these nuanced wide receivers. But Whittington did well in training camp last year. Got a lot of buzz. Injuries happened, but they've been happening throughout his football career, even at college. But he has proven that he can rack up targets when given the opportunity. And that opportunity is when one of those main wide receivers, if both of them are out even, he can get those targets. But Jordan Whittington is a guy to stash, especially if you got the room to do so around wide receiver 90 range. He's a guy to look at just in case that happens as a wide receiver stash to get through the draft, maybe through training camp to see what happens with this depth chart. Keaton Mitchell. He is the stash of stashes when it comes to running backs. Can you hold him? Can you not is the question. Because Derrick Henry, but like we've been saying, running back injuries were light this year. That could ramp up, and that could ramp up on any team. We had a lot of veteran running backs stay healthy last year. Keaton Mitchell, 4.3 speed, electric. He is the Will Fuller of running backs, and when you have a Will Fuller player, a player that's very up and down when it comes to scoring, a player that's very volatile, those are the type of players that you just throw in that lineup when you're in a pinch. You just close your eyes. And you may want that with one of your roster spots. When you're building, you want an asset like that. Keaton Mitchell's one of those guys. Usually you don't have many of those players at running back, but Keaton Mitchell has the ability with just 5 to 10 touches get you an RB1 week because he can score from anywhere on the field. With that 4.3 speed, he's already proven that. Jacob Cowing is a wide receiver that we can stash. He's in the 100 range when it comes to rankings among wide receivers. A forgotten asset. There's a lot of talent at the wide receiver spot for the 49ers. They might bring in more. This is a guy that broke out with 2 different collegiate programs. He's got an early breakout age. He's got good technical nuance. We're watching him through training camp to see if he can climb the depth chart. We're watching the depth chart throughout the season to see if there's injuries because this is a guy that could come out of nowhere. He could come out of nowhere. He's that technical. He's that good. That's the type of player he is. But he's also a player that's buried, lower draft capital, that could do nothing in the league. But again, at this range, at this price, just a stash player, just a stash option that we're looking at. Amari Demercado is a running back with a lot of pop. He's got some size. He's explosive. And also when James Conner went out, they were sharing the workload, him and Trey Benson, about 50-50. He was getting some work in the passing game. He was showing some of that upside. Amari Demercado, RB81. If you can stretch it that deep on your roster, a lot of you can't, he might be a guy to think about just in case they like him. He's explosive. He could get nuked from this draft. I imagine he will. There's a good chance of that because there's a lot of good running backs in this class. But Amari Demercado is an explosive player with size that got some work throughout the season as the RB3, and usually an RB3 does not get this many opportunities. And I want to note, one time James Conner went out with a little ankle injury. He had to get it wrapped up a little bit. It was for a short bit, and I believe that was week 6 or maybe even like week 7 or something, and it was in the middle of the season. They were splitting the workload 50-50 between him and Trey Benson, and Amari Demercado was getting touches. He was getting opportunity. They look at him as a reliable asset. We'll see through training camp. We'll see what happens, but he's a running back to pay attention to. Samvaki is a player to pay attention to as well. They got a little bit of draft capital invested in him. Again, you know what's up with these Detroit Lions. Jahmyr Gibbs is the man. Dave Montgomery's the hammer. And I don't look for them to keep bringing in running backs. He might be on the back end of the depth chart. He might be a player you're looking at middle of the year if injuries hit. And injuries could hit. That's the running back position. So another guy to throw out there if you're looking for a running back. Rashid Shaheed is the ultimate best ball play. He's very volatile. He's up and down. He's streaky. Even with the injury, the market's not taking a dump on him. And he got you some good production here in 2024. Had some wide receiver 1 weeks in 2023. And if he's on the back end of your bench, you like that. Those are the mustache players we're looking at this week. Let me know who you're looking at right now in the comments below. Make sure to hit that subscribe button on the way out. Well, thanks for watching. Catch you on the next video.